My fault. I barely managed to speak, merely echoing mother-in-law David's words. That's exactly what I mean. If it weren't for you, none of this would have happened. I do not acknowledge you as Carter's wife. You're not suitable. That's what I mean. Why? Why all of a sudden? Why say such things? Hannah questioned. It's a problem that you've lied this long without understanding such things. Realize it. It's true what they say. Children from low-level single-parent homes have issues. Seeing you has only reinforced that belief, David stated. My name is Hannah. I'm a 35-year-old office worker living with my husband and elementary school-age child, a family of 3. Since the beginning of my marriage, we've lived close to my husband Carter's family home. We maintained a good relationship while keeping a comfortable distance. The turning point in our relationship with my father-in-law and David came a few years ago. They always cared for us, and we were grateful. But father-in-law passed away after a long illness. David's grief at losing father-in-law was painfully evident to me at that time. Considering Carter's commute, we planned to move, but seeing David's condition made leaving her alone worrisome. Carter and I discussed it many times, and we decided to stay put until David's situation stabilized. That's when it started, slowly but surely. David began to overstep our personal space. When my father-in-law was alive, David never visited our home unnecessarily. She never came unannounced, not as far as I knew. But now, she suddenly started showing up without any notice. It began as a day or two, but recently, she's at our house half the week. If only she had given prior notice, I could bear it. But entertaining David when she's so unpleasant is disheartening, especially since she only brings up unpleasant conversations. You're always at home late, aren't you? Are you too busy with work? Are you taking proper care of Noel? What do you mean by proper care? Are you serving nutritious meals and looking after his health? Carter is the pillar of our family, my precious son Hannah. Are you just serving him frozen meals and hot deli food because you're short on time? Hannah glanced at the freezer, her demeanor suggesting she might just open it. Well, not always, but sometimes, she admitted. Carter tells me not to overdo it too. But David, clearly concerned, pressed on. Just because you discussed it with Carter doesn't mean you can neglect proper meals. It's just laziness. You should be able to manage that, considering Carter's health. What are your thoughts on this? Every time Hannah tried to speak, David's tone grew harsher. I'm sorry, David. I try, but it's hard to find the time. That's just laziness, David responded. I've worked for many years, and I understand the difficulties of working women. But despite that, I've overcome and provided healthy meals, maintaining our household for my husband and Noel. From my experience, not having time is just an excuse. Stop making excuses, Hannah. Show some responsibility as a homemaker in charge of your family's health. I can't rest easy otherwise. David, a longtime middle school teacher, always judged everything by her standards without considering others. Due to a minor incident in middle school related to her family background, Hannah had a poor impression of teachers, including David. Despite this, she understood that David cared about their family in her way, which is why she couldn't say anything and just listened during her lectures. But maybe my attitude seemed unreliable as David's behavior gradually changed. Before, she used to come unannounced to lecture or make snide remarks. But lately, she started bringing homemade meals, always in such large quantities that our family couldn't finish in one go, mostly Carter's favorites. At first, I thanked her for her efforts, and encouraged by this, David began bringing food daily. Hannah, I understand you're busy, but can't you come home earlier? The meals I prepare get cold because I can't get them inside. I want Carter to eat them while they're hot. I'm sorry. I do want to come home early, but it's just a busy period at work right now. But you say that isn't it just that you're not good at your job? I heard on TV recently that people who are good at their jobs manage to leave on time. On the contrary, those who aren't good stay late and work overtime. It's like they were talking about you, Hannah. Aren't you, in fact, not good at your job? David always had a mean look on her face when she said such things. No, that's not it. I think I do my job well enough, I defended. Displeased with my attitude, David's face clearly showed her annoyance. I'm only making and bringing these meals because you always serve hot deli food. Don't you understand that if you come home late because of work, it's all for nothing? Don't you feel even a bit sorry for receiving all these meals I've made? She spoke as if expecting gratitude was a given. I never asked her to cook for us, neither did Noel. Of course, I thanked her and accepted the meals, but it was all David imposing on her goodwill. To me, it was a nuisance, albeit one I was grateful for. Then, one day, David said something that pushed me to my limit. I've been thinking, you're never home when I visit, right? So, to avoid wasting these meals, I think it's better if I also have a key to your house. That way, I can drop off the food anytime. Plus, with things being unsafe these days, I can quickly come over if something happens. Just ask Carter to give me a spare key, okay? Hearing this, I realized I couldn't handle it alone anymore. I consulted Carter about David's request. Noel, I need to talk to you about your mom. I can't handle this by myself anymore. What happened? Mom's issue? What's going on? David visits our house daily, always without any notice. I do my best to accommodate her when I can, but I can't always be available. I have my schedule too. And now she wants a spare key to our house. It's hard enough as it is. But if she can enter when we're not home, that's unbearable. If we give her one, she might start coming over all the time. Just the thought is frightening. I'm sorry to speak this way about your mom. No, seriously, Mom said that. I don't like the idea of her coming in with a spare key, either. Okay, I understand it might be hard for you to say, so I'll talk to her clearly about it. Carter was sympathetic to my concerns and promised to talk to David. I hoped this would make things better. I was glad I talked to Noel. The next day, while I was at work, David called. Hannah, what time will you be home today? What do you mean? Well, I made too much beef stew, Carter's favorite. I thought I'd bring it over. So what time will you be home? I see. In that case, I should be home a little after 7, so I'll be there by 7:30. All right, I'll come around then. Thanks. It might have been the first time David called before visiting. Carter must have talked to her already. I was impressed by how quickly things changed, but honestly, I didn't just want her to call before visits. I wanted her to stop visiting altogether. That was my true wish. But for now, I was genuinely happy she called in advance. David's visit frequency didn't change, but she started calling beforehand, and that alone significantly reduced my stress. However, after a while, I noticed something odd. I started running into David more often when I was out. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, like when our family went shopping on the weekend, or when I went to buy toys with my child, or even bumped into her at the station on a weekday evening. Meeting her this frequently seemed too much for coincidence, but strangely, nothing more happened. We'd bump into each other, exchange greetings, explain what we were doing, and that was it. It never led to anything else. Maybe that's why, before I knew it, I had become accustomed to this situation. On one holiday, while this was going on, we decided to clean the house before the delivery of a sofa set Carter had wanted for a while. We planned to place it in the living room, so that was our primary focus for cleaning. But before we knew it, both Carter and I got carried away and started cleaning the kitchen and bedroom too. It was a completely accidental discovery in a corner of the bedroom. There was an inconspicuous outlet that seemed unlikely to ever be used, with only a double outlet adapter plugged in. I didn't remember buying it nor placing it there, and Carter didn't recall it either. Both of us felt something was off. Without saying a word to each other, we started checking all the outlets in the house. We found one mysterious outlet adapter each in the kitchen and living room, and another in the bedroom, making 3 in total. By then, we had a feeling about what it might be, but we were too scared to put it into words. It's like those things you see on TV sometimes, isn't it? Who would do this and why? I wondered aloud. In the middle of my sentence, Carter suddenly asked about the banking card. I was confused, not understanding what Carter meant. Noel, noticing my confusion, asked slowly and clearly, "Is our banking card here? Has it gone missing?" Noel, too, seemed to have his thoughts on the matter and quickly checked. After confirming the banking card was safe, Carter put his finger to his lips and quietly moved us to the living room. "We might be bugged, so it's better not to talk about it there. We should be safe here. It's far enough," he said, reassuring me. As I was about to call the police in a panic, Carter stopped me. "It's good to report to the police, but let's wait. Reporting without knowing who did it might just waste time. I have an idea." He then shared his plan with me. Honestly, upon hearing it, I wanted to report it immediately, but Carter seemed to have a hunch. That night, we put the double outlet back in its original place, wrapped in newspaper, with a fan blowing on it continuously. At 2 a.m., the front door quietly opened, and a figure entered, heading straight to the living room. In the living room, the figure picked up the double outlet, inspecting it closely. We captured all these actions on camera, and without any warning, turned on the living room lights. The figure panicked at the sudden light. I was momentarily stunned upon seeing the person, but it also felt expected. It was David. "So it was you. We need an explanation, Mom." Carter spoke calmly, but with underlying anger. However, David turned her anger towards me. "Hannah, what is this all about?" Even in this situation, she seemed not to understand her position. "I just came to check on something, and now even Carter is looking at me like that. What's going on? Don't play dumb. What were you checking by sneaking into our house in the middle of the night? What does it matter? More importantly, why are you two so angry with me? You still don't get it. This was all my husband's idea." We're the ones asking for an explanation, not you, David. If you have something to say, answer our questions first. Hannah's right. If you're going to play dumb, we'll call the police. Understand? Carter spoke coldly, and David's attitude shifted as if she realized there was no other way. Reporting to the police? That's an overreaction. We're family. There's no need for such formalities. This is all a misunderstanding, so let's not make a big deal out of it. A misunderstanding, you say? Then you better explain yourself clearly to clear it up, unless we are not convinced. Still, claiming it's a misunderstanding at this point. There must be a good reason for it, right, Mom? Well, it's just, loneliness. I was lonely, so I did it. Lonely? So you were bugging us, and you expect us to accept that? All this time, David's unannounced visits and frequent encounters when we were out were because she had been eavesdropping and monitoring our movements. Unaware of this, I struggled with the invasion of my personal space by David and even blamed myself, thinking I had a problem for not being able to handle it well. I had pushed myself almost to my limit, but it was all because David had been eavesdropping. I felt a mix of relief that it wasn't my fault and anger towards David's actions, which made my tone and attitude towards her naturally harsher. Do you think that reason is enough for us to be satisfied? What you're doing, David, is inexcusable. Don't you understand that? Hannah's right. Mom, we can't accept that reason, and we can't forgive what you've been doing. I hate to say it, but what you're doing is wrong. If things continue like this, we can't have a relationship like before. Wait, Noel, I'm your parent. How can you say such terrible things to your mother? You weren't like this before, were you? David's face was like that of a forlorn stray cat seeking pity from a passerby, but Carter was even colder and more distant. Who's causing this, Mom? You won't admit your actions, and your reasons are selfish. It's wrong. Enough is enough. We're leaving here. Of course, we won't tell you where we're moving, Noel. Why, David? Please stop. You've betrayed your son. Don't you understand how he feels? It seemed the words from her son, Carter, deeply shocked David. She was visibly shaken and blustered. All I wanted was to hear an apology from you, for you to admit your wrongdoing, and then discuss what to do next. But as soon as I spoke to David, she glared at me with intense hostility. Quiet. You've been saying whatever you want. It's all because of you that I did this. If you hadn't been here, I wouldn't have had to do any of this. If only you hadn't married Noel." I couldn't comprehend the sudden outburst from David. My fault. My fault. I managed to speak, only echoing David's words. "That's exactly what I mean. If it weren't for you, none of this would have happened. I do not acknowledge you as Carter's wife. You're not suitable. That's what I mean." Why? Why say such things so suddenly? It's a problem that you've lived this long without understanding such things. Realize it. It's true what they say. Children from low-level single-parent homes often have issues. Seeing you has only reinforced that belief. Noel, finally catching up to the situation, hurriedly tried to stop David. "Mom, what are you saying all of a sudden? Do you realize what you're saying?" "Yes," David responded abruptly. "I understand perfectly. I thought you would feel constrained by marrying a woman from such a low-level family. That's why I was monitoring to prevent any problems. It's all for your sake, Noel." We were baffled by David's sudden confession, especially Noel, who seemed to be seeing this side of his mother for the first time. He was unsure how to react. My confusion was different from Carter's. I was perplexed by the words David had spoken to me. I had heard those words before. Why had David spoken to them? That was my confusion. Eventually, I remembered something and asked David, "David, I heard you were a middle school teacher. Is that true?" My question, seemingly unrelated to the situation, caused an exaggerated reaction in David. From her response, something clicked for me. "If you were a middle school teacher, you must know many other teachers, right? There's a teacher I can't forget. Is she, perhaps, an acquaintance of yours?" I mentioned a name, and upon hearing it, David became visibly shaken and stuttered. "Why that name?" "I thought so. It's connected." Seeing David's reaction, I was certain my suspicions were correct. The name I had mentioned was that of my middle school homeroom teacher. I mentioned my middle school homeroom teacher. "From your reaction, David, it seems you know her. I was treated terribly by that teacher and got into some trouble. It seems like you've heard about it, haven't you?" The trouble with my former teacher was related to my family background. My parents divorced when I was in elementary school, and I was taken in by my mom. I was told by my mom that the divorce was due to a personality clash, not because they hated each other. Even after the divorce, my father and I kept in touch regularly. We even had family dinners together several times. Both my parents worked, but they had different life rhythms, and there were many mismatches. So they decided it was better to live separately for both of their sakes. Even though they were divorced, I didn't feel like they were. However, my former homeroom teacher didn't see it that way. She labeled me as a problem child because I came from a single-parent family. Children from low-level single-parent homes are often considered problematic. I was told that directly. No matter how much I tried to explain, she wouldn't listen. To make things worse, she had a troublesome way of managing the class. She believed in uniting the class by targeting one student. By making one student the scapegoat, the rest of the class would come together. She believed in this method, and I became the target. The reason was simple. I was raised in a single-parent family. Perhaps she thought it was okay to do anything to a problematic child like me. Of course, I couldn't accept such reasoning and resisted desperately. Because one of the reasons was my parents' divorce, I couldn't tell them about the treatment I received from the teacher that resisting as a middle schooler wasn't easy. When I was cornered beyond my capacity, I finally opened up to my parents. I told them how the teacher was treating me. Fortunately, my parents acted quickly upon hearing my story. There was an immediate discussion with my parents and the teacher, and the issue was resolved. The teacher resigned as the class homeroom teacher and left the school unexpectedly in the middle of the year. The issue was resolved quickly after. I confided in my parents, but I still remember it vividly. It was that significant of an event. That's why I reacted to David's words. If she was acquainted with such a former teacher, I could easily imagine what she had been told about me. But that didn't make me feel any sympathy for David. I understood too well what she thought of me. Now it seems, David, you didn't hear the whole story from your acquaintance. If you had, you wouldn't have done such a thing. The whole story? What are you talking about? Yes, I was raised in a single-parent home with my mom, but you might not know that I was frequently in contact with my father. Indeed, my parents divorced due to personality differences, but there was another reason: their work. And, by the way, my father is a lawyer. Maybe I'm telling you for the first time, but I am a lawyer's daughter. Knowing that someone related to legal expertise is involved, you can understand what your actions mean, right? No, that's a lie. Who would believe that? My former teacher reacted the same way when I told her. You two are quite similar. I didn't hear anything. I haven't heard such a story. No, of course. No one shares inconvenient truths with others. It's natural. David's attitude changed completely from her earlier confidence. No one could imagine being bugged by someone whose relative is a lawyer. It's obvious how dangerous that would be for oneself. If I tell my father about what you did, you understand what might happen, right? It could become a bigger issue than you think. Stop, please. Don't say that. Please, I beg you. Don't tell anyone about this, please. I beg you. If that's the case, then answer our questions, okay? Yes, I'll answer. Please, I beg of you. So, you heard everything about me from that acquaintance? Yes, that's right. When I mentioned your name, they seemed to know. And then they started telling you about it. Yes, I thought if I found a weakness, I could somehow get Carter to divorce you. I see, that's clear now. I thought this was probably her true intention. From David's demeanor, it didn't seem like she had anything else to hide. At the same time, I was somewhat shocked to know she thought this way about me. Mom, I have no intention of leaving Hannah. Just so you know, Carter said to David in a firm tone. I don't understand what you dislike about Hannah or why you did this, and I don't want to know. But Hannah is an important wife and family member to me. Unfortunately, I think it's better if we don't meet anymore to protect my family. That's it. Yes, David could barely respond to Carter's clear declaration of cutting ties, understandably overwhelmed by his decision. The next day, at Carter's insistence, we reported the eavesdropping to my father and the police. We also sent a warning to the former teacher through my father. Surprisingly, the former teacher did not know David's actions. However, given that the teacher's remarks had led to the situation, we strongly demanded she never speak of it again. I can imagine how formidable my father must have been in his anger, but she must have been frightened enough of him. We even received a written pledge that she would never involve herself with us again. After ensuring all these matters were resolved, our family moved. We chose a location near Carter's workplace, but didn't inform David at all. As a precaution, we blocked David's contact information. Not just me, but Carter did the same. I heard from neighbors near the in-laws' house that David, who had been a longtime educator, had a good reputation. Still, her deeds became widely known when the police got involved. Rumors sparked more rumors, and David began to be viewed coldly by everyone in the neighborhood, eventually being left alone. Now David is said to be living alone in her house, with no one visiting her, almost unrecognizable from her former self. Even after hearing about David's current situation, I had no intention of forgiving her. In my mind, I've resolved to act as if David never existed from the start. Now that I have no ties with David, I plan to cherish my family even more. I hope you guys enjoy our video. To watch more interesting stories, subscribe to our channel. Thank you.